Hello, good evening, good afternoon. It's me again with Prof. Ralph, my professor and good friend from Canada. But this time around, we are working on a new project, something that is a lot more formal, educational, and also interactive. It'll be exciting to get to hear how you guys receive this information today. And please take time to listen and comment and let us know what your thoughts are. So this new platform that we are on today and what we're starting to do is a part of a ministry called the Elijah Mission Institute. So Elijah Mission Institute is busy with work to do with students across the world who meet together in cohorts, really to discuss things that are really related to life and godliness. But in this platform, we call this platform the Elijah Experience with Prof. Ralph, because Prof. Ralph is our scholar here that will help us understand a lot to do with the church and how the church must be maybe get involved in life, in civic life, and in every form of life. So today we'll be looking at Ekklesia scattered, which Ekklesia is roughly interpreted as church in many circles, but Prof. Ralph will educate us more on that. And so we're talking about the church. If the church is a building, which many of us know to be, and Sunday service is an event or a spiritual escape to many people, so then what is ecclesia? Dr. Ralph, explain to us what is ecclesia. So what?
Yeah, so the Greek word ekklesia comes from way back already in the 6th century before Christ in the city of Athens. The city of Athens developed something called democracy, which most of us are familiar with. And democracy
Yes.
means the citizens of the city had a voice in the decisions of the city. And they met on a regular basis in an assembly that they called ekklesia. And so they would meet once a month. The councilors of the city would bring recommendations forward. The citizens would debate them. Then they would vote on them using little pebbles. And that was the process that the citizens made decisions when they're gathered in an ecclesia. So the word ecclesia simply means assembly or meeting or gathering. And so when the New Testament uses the word ecclesia, that's its basic meaning. And it does not mean a building. So church means a building. So church is not a good translation of ecclesia if we think of it as a building. Church also means religious organization like Anglican Church, etc. But ecclesia in the first century did not mean a religious organization. And so Paul's taking this term and he's naming his communities ecclesia. And so for a Greek on the street hearing Christians calling themselves an ecclesia, they're going, well, wait a second, we have an ecclesia that meets regularly over there in the marketplace or in that theater or in that structure. What are you guys doing calling yourselves ecclesia? And they're basically saying, we are here to promote the health of the city. We're partnering with the city's ecclesia to say we are here too for the health of the city and we want to be involved. We don't want to just gather in our little enclaves Sunday mornings, for example. During the week, we want to be out in the community helping and being part of what the city wants to do.
Beautiful. What could he have in mind for him to come up with such a name, to identify what we call today as church, as ecclesia, as it were, in the first century BC?
Great question. Yeah, because if all that Paul had in mind was identifying it as this sort of people who want to be a blessing to the city, like Jeremiah talks about by calling themselves ecclesia, it's still not communicating much to that city because, well, what are your ethics? What values are you bringing? What is your spiritual heritage that you bring into being this community in the city? And the other side of the word ecclesia is that when the Old Testament got translated into Greek, that's called the Septuagint, beginning in the 3rd century before Christ. Basically, all the Jews who didn't live in the land of Judea anymore, they lost their ability to read Hebrew as a rule, and they read Greek. So now they're reading the Old Testament translated into Greek, and we get the word
Yes.
ekklesia coming up. And the word
Hmm.
ekklesia, especially when Deuteronomy describes the people of Israel in their desert wanderings, they're called the ekklesia
Hmm.
of the Lord. And
Hmm.
this ekklesia then permanently identifies the people of God um, as having a Jewish heritage by its
Hmm.
Septuagint use. So for Paul to
Yes.
name his communities ecclesia not only makes them relevant to Greeks and Romans in the cities, oh, we get what you're trying to communicate, but it communicates
Hmm.
their key moral and ethical and spiritual heritage that they're bringing to bear in their conversations with the city. We're
Yeah.
representing the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and his
Hmm.
priorities for justice, for
Yeah.
loving your enemies, for being a
Hmm.
people who are separate from pagan
Yeah.
idolatrous practices, sexual practices, etc. So yeah, he's marrying the two very well and communicating a holistic the fact that Ecclesia will always have a Jewish covenantal identity as part of who we are as a people in the city.
Beautiful. It looks like Paul was not creating an escapist group that was trying to to run away from the world and just cause themselves in a corner among themselves and do all these wonderful spiritual things and not want to be a part of the world. Did you say that?
Oh, beautifully said. Yeah, it's not an escapist identity. It's an
Hmm.
integrational identity. Yeah, they don't create little fortresses, spiritual fortresses, and put a big moat around it and say, if you're not one of
Yeah.
us, don't even dare to enter our congregation.
Mhm.
It's saying, no, we're here to get out. We gather to support and bless each
Mhm.
other, but then we're out in
Mhm.
a Monday to Saturday being ministers of the gospel.
I like that. So if Ecclesia is gathered on Sunday, what's going on Monday?
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, because um, the church as we know it today, at least in my world and my circle, yeah, on Sunday you see a body of people, a unified body of people. On Monday, it's individuals, everybody running their own lives the way they do their things. And there's no sense of, I'm part of this ecclesia in whatever sphere of life that I find myself in, bringing what I would call the covenantal promises. But I guess before we get there, we need to go back and really try to understand what those covenantal promises are, or maybe how Ecclesia connects to those before it's. So let's just go there. So we're going to explore the two revolutionary dimensions of this scattered community. It's a political or civic responsibility, and it's also a deep covenantal and ethnic history. So, why is it important, Dr. Rao, for us to understand Ecclesia as both a civic responsibility and connected to a deep covenantal and also ethnic history of the Jews? Why is it important for the church to have this dual understanding?
I'd say if we look at it through the lens of justice, then
Yes.
if ecclesia only had this Greco-Roman political meaning, as people, heard Christians call themselves that, then they
Yeah.
would probably recognize social justice as a part of their priority, to help very
Mm-hmm.
practically the needs of the people of the city, not just
Mm-hmm.
spiritually. But without
Mm-hmm.
the connection to the God of Israel as
Yes.
the basic moral and ethical priorities of, then there's no why for the what. So it's not just
Mm-hmm.
social justice that's important because people
Mm-hmm.
have different ideas of what would be social justice. It's
Yes.
God's justice in society that now becomes the priority. And so that channels the efforts and the trajectories of what Christians were going to be doing in the cities to reflect the character of God and how He would work with people and bringing His justice into the land.
I like that. Would you then say that the ecclesia of today is connected to the root of the ecclesia of Exodus, the scattered community in the wilderness, at least in essence, in the life that it carries?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the scattered community in the wilderness um,
Yes.
has actually a good analogy, particularly when you're dealing with the idea of we're exiles, we're on Exodus as the church.
Yes.
So we're not to
Mhm.
plant our personal roots of of who we are, of our identity in what we accomplish in
Mhm.
the world, because the world is passing. We're just passing through.
Mhm.
But as we pass
Yes.
through, we want to bring life and vitality and community
Mhm.
as we're passing through this world. So yeah, an Exodus motif is a great picture. We're on the way to the promised land, and we want
Yes.
to help, already develop some of that promised land and how we interact in our communities. Yeah, in essence, as the church, we already are the kingdom of God, part of the kingdom of God upon earth. And
Mhm.
so, what we will experience in the future in the presence of God, we are the presence of God right now already. And so, God
Mhm.
is already present, working because of Christ in and among the world, and we are his hands, his feet, his eyes, his embodiment
Mhm.
on this earth. And so we are seeking to integrate um, what we will have in heaven into our
Mhm.
earthly existence. So we want to be a people, the fruit of the spirit, a
Mhm.
people who are, you know, holistically involved in helping people live into God's salvation, mind, body, soul, spirit, and social relationships.
Sometimes we are trained in the thought line of thinking, wow, the world has no value to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we get into these escapist mindsets. Say,
Right.
wow, let's just disconnect totally from this evil world, because one day we're gonna go to heaven where everything is perfect. But I can see here how, from the way you've explained it, how we need to be the vessels through which that kingdom. Okay, should I say the kingdom is already come through us, through Christ, but it's in us, the presence. But also we need to propagate and promote that kingdom, maybe even grow that kingdom um, uh, through us. So it just takes me to thinking, and maybe I should ask this question. Following the same route of thought and route of thinking, how can we then redefine a believer's role in the public spaces? And the world is becoming more pluralistic in this pluralistic world. How does a believer live uh, faithfully to the ideals of integrated eschatology and Ekklesia, the way Paul envisioned?
I would say one word, community.
Mm,
So our priority as God's people is to build community wherever we are. And
mm,
that means not just a spiritual community, but
mm,
community wherever we may be found. And so we're bringing the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, into our social engagements in a way
mm,
that we're trying to build community with people of difference. It's too easy as God's people to say, well, we don't want to be contaminated by the world, quote unquote. So we're just going
mm,
to, partition ourselves off as a spiritual community. And when we're out there in the world, we're just going to fight everybody. And we're not interested in building community with them. We're interested in building a Christian culture. So we're going to fight everybody
mm,
and try and win the wars. And that I mean, yes, we need to stand firm in what we believe, but as we're standing firm in what we believe, we want to extend our hands in friendship to those around us to invite
mm,
conversations of difference and saying, how can I build relationship with you, even though I disagree with you? And if
mm,
that, because the devil will never create community, he always creates
mm.
disunity. And so
Yes.
wherever we find community as Christians, we should help breathe life into that. Even it may not be spiritual community, it may just be
Mhm.
community, people in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, they just are friends. Well, let's get in there and become friends and add life
Mm,
and build that sense of connection with people so they don't see the church as something separate and different from their
mhm,
culture, but integrated and interested in fostering more life within that culture. So I think
mm,
community is always a thing. And wherever you find community, even if it isn't Christian community, still breathe life in there. Find ways
mm,
to add to the community as God's people, because God
mm.
is somewhere in that working of people wanting community. That's only the Lord can give people that kind of motivation. The devil will not want that kind of motivation. I would say,
But then how do we contrast what you said right now with what I would call toxic Christian nationalism,
hmm,
which I don't know if it has roots in the Bible or even roots in the Spirit of God, I must say. But how do we contrast our social engagement or public engagement, uh, getting involved in the community, whether the community is a church community or just a social club? How do we then separate this from this toxic Christian nationality ideals, which I think they do not promote the work of the kingdom?
hmm.
But then how?
Yeah, that's always a challenge, right? Because we are supposed to be salt and light in our cultures. So we want to
Yes.
engage in the culture in a way that shows culture a fuller way, a way of life in that abundantly, and
Mm,
how we work together as people in a city, in a state, in a nation.
mm,
But there's obviously tons of other pressures and forces trying to challenge, Christians' perspectives. I mean, I'm of the opinion that the Christian call to being involved in our, and I'll use the word secular because there's no such thing as sacred and secular. Everything is sacred in
yes,
God's mind. But I'll
everything.
just say, for the sake of terminology, which you understand, in our secular
Yes.
engagements, I would say the Bible mandates that we are to be involved at the municipal level, changing
Mm,
the municipal level, bringing community and
mm,
life and basic life resources, being
yes.
integrated, being good citizens of our villages, towns, cities, and
Mm,
great citizens of our heavenly city, the New Jerusalem.
yes.
But I don't see that we are supposed to then become political lobbyists for cultural change at at the state and federal level as an
Mm,
organized group. Yes, Christians should aspire to be involved in official governmental channels by
yes.
getting involved in becoming nominees for electoral
Mhm,
positions, and then within their positions being salt and light and trying to breathe change in the power brokers that they're engaging with. Um,
mm,
but I'd say that's not a place for, say, Christians to band together and create a political group that then becomes this voting block that forces cultural change, which, yeah, you may get cultural change, but you're going to harden hearts of the people who feel like they're being opposed and forced upon. Life
yes.
should come from within as we are being life.
Mhm,
It shouldn't be forced upon. That doesn't promote life. That promotes cultural, yes, a culture change, but perhaps at the risk of damaging the spiritual journeys people are on uh,
mm,
to a loving God who they now see as being a very oppressive God. And so we
yeah.
really have to find that balance, which is no, it's not a science, it's an art.
Yeah. So, guys, this is just the beginning, and I think it's gonna get even much better. So, as you can see today, we actually are looking at we're exploring the church not as a weekend refuge, but as a displaced force. Meaning, the real value of church starts on Monday when we go out into whatever sphere of influence God has placed us in. That's when the church begins. It feels to me that the church was constituted, is gathered in order to be scattered. Like for the purpose of being scattered, we gather on Sunday.
Hmm.
So if we miss the being scattered, maybe let me use the right word, maybe in my mind, I'm thinking when we miss the being purposeful in our scattering, then we lose the whole essence of why we gather on Sunday.
Hmm.
Because I don't think God just wants us to be bloated with its knowledge that we don't even practice. I think the whole essence of the kingdom, I think that's the reason why Jesus calls it kingdom and the Father calls it kingdom, because kingdom is about ethics, about justice, about mercy, it's about humility, it's about living out those values. So thank you, Professor Ralph, for today's session. Really good introduction, good nuggets. Guys, I invite you to dig in and ask all the questions. Thank you for now. Bye-bye.